What is remarkable about Lord North was that he actually managed to stay in power. Virtually every other prime minister in the 18th century lost power at the beginning of a war. This was true of Britain's most successful long-serving prime minister, Sir Robert Walpole. He fell from power at the beginning of a war with Spain. North left much to be desired as a leader in wartime, but otherwise he had really exceptional qualities that ironically allowed Britain to sustain the war in America. Much of the membership in the House of Commons were independent members of the country gentry. They could usually be relied on to vote with the government, but they did not always do so. And indeed, prime ministers fell when they couldn't command both the support of the majority of the House of Commons and the support of the King. Lord North managed to do both. He was a brilliant orator. This is someone who deflected the skills of Charles James Fox, of William Pitt, of Edmund Burke. He would come into the House of Commons usually about noontime. Today we think highly when we see the British Prime Minister on Question Time and how they field questions for an hour each week. Lord North was in Parliament during session for 3 days every week, and he would sit through the debates, again that would heating up at midday, often into the early hours of the morning. He'd wait until the very end of the day and would regularly make 2-hour speeches without notes. He literally got the last word in. Even his budget speeches, which included a lot of financial data, even these were made without notes. And people would come into the visitor gallery just to watch them because they were such a spectacle. He had a tremendously engaging personality. People liked him. Even his opponents found it difficult not to like him as a person. He was a great wit and often had a self-deprecating humour, but also a humour that deflected his opponents. There was one occasion when he did indeed fall asleep in the House of Commons, and he woke up to hear George Grenville droning on about the budget of 1689. And North woke up and shouted, "Zounds, I've woken up a century too early." Another time, Charles James Fox said to him that he just sat in the House of Commons idle and surrounded by flattery. And North replied that he did indeed spend a lot of time in the House of Commons, but it must be clear to members that he certainly wasn't idle, and even less was he surrounded by flattery. And there was another time when opposition members criticised him for using the word rebel late in the war, feeling that this had got rather tired and rather absurd. And he said, "Very well, I won't use the term rebellious. I'll simply speak of the gentleman in opposition on the other side of the water." He was, in addition, a brilliant financier, and this is where he played a key role in sustaining the British war for America. Most British prime ministers were in fact chosen for their financial ability, because Britain's greatest problem in the 18th century was the size of the national debt. At times, they spent about 50% of tax revenue simply on servicing the debt. Lord North sustained what had been the greatest debt of any period. Britain, you'll remember, went into this war originally, or taxed America originally, in order to help defray the national debt. North, with his success with his credit system, with working with the English merchants, managed to keep the country afloat. It should be remembered that France went bankrupt as a result of its role in the American Revolution, leading directly to the calling of the Estates General and leading directly to the French Revolution.